Before we set up our recipe, I just noticed that I have a bug. So if I go to the bigger screen, this is the application we're working on. Notice how this input does look very, very ugly. And the reason for that is because I messed up again on a class where this is not a proper class name. This is not going to be control. This is going to be control. And then once we're going to save it, this is the look that we're shooting for, as well as the application is not going to squeeze the input. In fact, even though the screen is going to get bigger, we will not gonna wrap to the next line. And that would be the fix that I would like to make. Hopefully you did write control the right way, right from the get-go, so you didn't have that mistake. I can close the recipe list because we are done passing, because we just passed down the prop, and that's all we were interested. We will gonna leave the recipes page open because we're gonna work with it later. But the recipe is the one that we're going to be getting all our information. And for the specific recipe, again, we're going to start by destructuring. And this is where we're going to be looking for all the values that I have right now within my recipe item. If you don't trust me, you can obviously open up the sidebar and you could look at temp details. These are going to be all the things that you're going to be getting. And I don't know why I keep showing you temp details if this is the temp list. So these are the properties that I would like to destructure. But I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to trust myself and I'm going to add const. That's going to be my variable names, image underscore URL, then title, and then we have source underscore URL, as well as publisher, and last but not least, we have recipe ID. That is something that I'm looking for. These are the variables, and I'm going to set this equal to this dot props. I also like to show you that we will gonna not pros but props. We will gonna need to set up. And by the way, right away, it's basically complaining, saying that you have pros. I don't have pros, not anymore. Let me refresh. Everything is working fine. And then what I'm looking for in my final application is the fact that if I click on details, this is going to be in fact link. Remember, if I click on this, there's going to be a single recipe page. And that's the reason why we'd also want to import the link from the React router DOM. I'm going to write link, then from React router DOM. That will going to be our setup. And now let's start working with our return since we have destructured everything. And for the router DOM, as always, we're going to start with some kind of column. And why I'm starting with the column in this case, I'm going to head over now back to the recipe list just to show you that we placed everything in a row. So each and every item that's going to be rendered as we're looping through the array, we're going to have to be a column. That's the reason why we don't set up the container, the row, and the column, because we already set up that in the recipe list. And now within the recipe, we're just going to be using the fact that we're already sitting within the row. And let's do a div with some classes. So column 10, let's say starting from a extra small screen size, column 10. Let's see what we're going to have. Not 1M, but actually 10. Then let's place it always in the center for each and every item. And I would also want to have column medium. And now I'm creating a column layout where I'm going to say, okay, the moment we're going to get to the medium screen, there's going to be 2 column layout. And then once we're going to get to the bigger screen, there's going to be 3 column layouts. So column, large, and 4. That's the one of the basic syntaxes for the Bootstrap, where you can control, depending on the screen size, what kind of column layout you're going to have. And I'm also going to add for each and every card or the recipe, there's going to be margin top bottom 3. Then within this class of div, I would also want to have a card. So each and every recipe is going to be card. And this is going to be our div. However, I'm going to add a little bit of styling. So I'm going to cheat a little bit where we're going to add some inline styling. We're not going to add that in our app CSS. We're just going to say right here within the component, the height is going to be 100%. That is just to make the text for all of them to look the same. And here we have an option of having the image to be sitting on top of the card. And if we would want that, we would need to have the first of all image. for the image, we were going to use the image URL. And this is the source for the image. So let's say that I'm going to be selecting image URL. Let's write it like so, image URL. And let's also add maybe a little bit of inline styling where I'm going to say the image should be 14 REM. So they would all look exactly the same. And let's write height. And in our case, 14 REMs is going to be fine. 14 REMs. Then we also need to add a class name, just because we again using the bootstrap, and the class to place this image on the top of the card is going to be image card top. And for alternative, I don't know, recipe, can write, and let's see what we're going to have. The moment I'm going to save it, this is telling me, okay, you do have the card, you do have the recipe, but there is a issue with my prop. Okay, so let's figure out where did I go wrong. So I will gonna have the image URL, fine, but if we want to test that, well, again, we have a few options. I can go back to my file and I can see whether this was the proper one. Let's see, temp list, right? And then we had image URL. That is interesting because they do match. Okay, so let's see, source image URL. This is technically matching. Let's also see maybe in a console log, or maybe we can just console log and see what's going to happen, what we're getting with this dot props. Maybe there's some kind of mess up there. And let's see whether we're passing. Maybe we're not passing the recipe. Maybe I messed up something with the recipe. I do have 3 objects. Each and every object has the recipe. And here's the kicker. Because I'm passing not only the object, but I also have the recipe. Because remember that if I would want to destructure this, I need to destructure this from the recipe. So my destructuring was wrong. That's the key thing that happened. Because I have the object. Yeah, that is true. But then the object is being passed in the recipe prop. So not only the props, but I need to look for recipe. That way, I was trying to fix it. I thought that I messed up with my actual destructuring, or I'm sorry, with the variable that I was getting. But in fact, it was my destructuring that went wrong, because within the recipe list, let's again see where's the recipe list. We're obviously passing here this as a recipe prop. And if we're destructuring, we know that not only we're looking for this dot props, we also need to add this recipe. Okay, so we fixed that. Fair enough. Now we have our 3 images. So everything starts looking already better. We fixed that. Then right after the image, so we're gonna have div. So still within a div, and not what I wanted, but still within the div, but not within the image, of course. So right after the image, we're gonna have the card body. We're gonna have div with classes of card body and text capitalize. Those are gonna be my 2 classes. And then let's write what we're gonna have as a title. So heading 6 is gonna be our title. And obviously this is the variable that we are already destructuring. There's gonna be our title. And then what else we're gonna have? Well, I think we can have another heading 6 with some few other class names. And the class names are gonna be following. We're gonna have text warning for the yellow text. Warning. And also we're gonna have text slanted. So the text is going to be italic, and we can write provided by, and this is going to be the publisher. So provided by, and let's write publisher. And let's see what we're going to have. Yeah, we have our publisher. Awesome. And you know what? Last one is going to be the footer, where we're going to have our links. So one link is going to be leading to the page, and the second one, the single recipe page. And the second one is just going to be going to source URL. And the way we're going to do that, so we have the card body. Right after the card body, again, don't place it within the card body, but we're going to have card footer. And these obviously are just bootstrap classes that are used for styling. And then the first thing that I'm going to have is going to be link. Now, the link, maybe for now, let's just leave it blank, because this is probably a little bit more important than what we're going to be doing with a source URL. since this is going to be leading to a separate page, to the page that we have ourselves, meaning with a React router. And the second one is going to be just a simple link. And for the single link, we have the href, and this is where I'm going to use the variable that I have for the source URL. So I'm going to say, okay, so this link is going to go to source URL. That should do it. But then if I'm going to add target blank, because remember, when I open this recipe URL, I would want the user to open this up in the new browser window or tab, because I don't want the user to leave my page. So for that, we have the target blank, but React is going to be complaining about that because we do need to add not only target blank the moment we will going to run the application. First of all, this is going to complain about two. So for the link, let's just say for now, this is going to be the homepage. Again, we're going to fix it in a second. You'll see what's going to happen. But if I'm going to head over to a console, you'll see a big fat error, or at least there should be an error. Console. And you know what? No, it's interesting. It's not complaining. Okay, but anyway, we would need the relationship. Now, maybe let's me test it out. Maybe this is just not showing because we don't have a link. Because I do want to show you where is the error. Technically, you don't have to see it, but you need to add a relationship attribute with a opener and not opener. Let's just write some kind of name. Let's say recipe URL, and let's see what's going to happen. Well, no, at the moment, everything is fine, even though this is target blank. And let's see, maybe if I'm going to click on it, it's going to change. And is it changing? No, this is going to recipe. Interesting. It was, in general, it should be complaining in the console. Then let me open this one. Oh, there it is. So using target underscore blank without relationship no opener is a security risk. So I was looking in the console, but I forgot that this is in fact in a terminal. So now I can close it, and we just need to copy and paste that. So we need to say, okay, not only target blank, but we need to add this attribute. And last, I would like to add some classes for this link. I'm going to say class name, and then we're going to have btn success. And you know what? What we're going to do? mx2. So margin left, right is going to be 2. And text capitalize, something like this. This should be our general idea where we have recipe URL. And now the most important thing, where we're going to be working with our link. And for that, I want to go back though to our app. So let me open up the sidebar. And remember in app.js, we had the route, and then we had the recipes and the ID. So my idea is very simple. So for each and every recipe that we have, I'm going to have the specific ID. And for the link, I'm going to press that I would like to go to this specific ID page. Obviously, at the moment, we're just going to be using placeholders. This is only going to work once we're going to hook up everything with food for fork. Because the way this is going to work is we're going to be using the Ajax request to get 30 most popular ones. Then once we're going to click on details, we're going to open up the single recipe page. And then we're going to do another Ajax call. And then we're going to be getting this specific information about recipe ID. In our case, as we're setting up everything, this is just going to be a dummy data. However, the link is still going to work the same, where in the next video, I'm going to show you how we can access this. How for each and every recipe that even we have right now, we can access that specific ID. That's going to be coming with each and every recipe. Let's close the sidebar on the left-hand side. We know that we're going to have a 2 attribute, something along the lines of recipes, and then some kind of ID. And the way this is going to work, we're going to have link to, then we're going to write recipes, then /, and now I'd like to make this as a template literal. So let's write, not terminal, let's write template literal 1, template literal number 2, and then we obviously need to place this in the actual curly braces. So I'm going to place it in curly braces. And now since I have the template literal, I can use the variable. And in this case, I'm going to say recipe ID. So that way, for each and every time I'm going to be opening up my single recipe page, the one that we created all the way in the beginning with the pages, I will going to get this recipe ID. And then for now, we're just going to display the dummy data. But once we're going to hook up everything with an Ajax, we're going to be getting this specific information about specific recipe, and we'll display it in that single recipe page. That's the whole spiel about it. And last but not least, we have a few class names. Let's write class name. I don't know, could be BTN primary, which we're gonna make our button blue. Text is gonna be capitalized, something like this. And then we have details. So we're gonna write, okay, so we're gonna be looking first of all for the closing tag for the link. I'm gonna close out our link, and let's just write details. Like so. Details, like so. It will be our information. All right. We have successfully created our recipe. Maybe in this case, let's check it out on a bigger browser window. So we have our search. All this is working well. We have our input fixed. Remember, we fixed the class. And last but not least, we have our recipes. And I think now we're ready to start working on our single recipe page, because at the moment, if I'm going to click on it, I'm just having this from single recipe. That's all. And that's going to be obviously the same for all of them, but we are getting this unique ID. And in the beginning of the next video, I'll show you how we can access that ID.